What if your clothes aren't selling not because of what you're listing, but because of the words that you're using? Because right now, there's people listing the exact same types of items and getting more views, getting more clicks, and getting the sale just by using different keywords. And the difference can be the difference between something just sitting or selling for 40, 80, even 100 plus bucks. Well, my name is LeeMeier, and I've made over 100,000 net profit selling used clothes. And I help other people stop second guessing and start making consistent sales. And one of the biggest shifts that changed everything for me was learning how buyers actually search. So in this video, I'm gonna show you the exact keywords, the styles, the trends, the hidden phrases that are getting items found and sold right now. And we're starting with one of the biggest opportunities that most people are missing.
Is Y2K, and this one is huge right now. This covers a huge broad spectrum of different types of styles. So the first item to be looking for is chunky platform shoes. This is a pair of Lower East Side. That's from the store Payless Shoe Source, I think it was called, or Payless Shoe Store, one of the two. They were not that expensive in the store. Those are selling for $50 to $100 in some cases. Here's another similar pair, more of a little bit of a wedge platform there, a block heel, not a true wedge, but it's got that heel to it. That one went for $85 from the brand LEI on the Poshmark platform. And then over on Mercari, the next type of item for Y2K aesthetic to look for are dragons. Dragons can show up on jeans, shirts, hoodies like this one here. This is a random brand. It's not anything in particular. I can't quite read it through there. I can't remember if it had it in the description or not. Silver Point. Oh, right here in the title, Silver Point. So you can see the dragons there. It's also kind of a tribal design down the sleeve. That one sold for $48 plus shipping. So keep your eye out for any of those kind of tribal or dragon. Here's another one over here on Mercari as well. That one went for almost $48 for that hoodie. And then wide leg jeans. I normally talk about Jinko jeans a lot, but there's really a lot more brands than just Jinko that are selling for big money right now. And this really goes back to just the style. Embroidery is really common with these really huge pockets. This is from a brand called Machine, and that pair went for $80 on eBay. And then the next type of item to look for Y2K aesthetic, it has to do with bags. These messenger bags were really popular from that era. And this is just kind of a basic bag. It's actually Old Navy. That one went for $30. And then these kind of hobo style slouchy bags. This one happens to be Juicy Couture, but if you find other brands that have this kind of look to them, a lot of them have kind of a gaudy look. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly the style with these, but they just kind of have a certain look to them. That one went for $209. And if you're like me and you have a hard time like remembering the style of the bags when you go to type up a listing, I do have a poster that is brand new that covers everything related to bags as far as hardware, the shape of the bag, the handle type. I cover everything on this poster, so it's all at your fingertips when you go to list. The next item from Y2K that is huge right now are pleated skirts. This is a really loose pleat. I just spit all over my computer. Really loose pleat here. This one went for $300 from Abercrombie, but these box pleats are probably the more common pleat from this era. This is a random brand, and that one sold for $50. If you find them from Y2K or from Abercrombie or Hollister, those are selling for into the hundreds as well, just like that last Abercrombie I just showed. The next item within Y2K, that style to be looking for, are crop tops. This is Victoria's Secret, normally doesn't sell for a whole lot. This one does happen to be new with tags. It does have some bling, which is another feature from Y2K, but that one went for $45. And then these fold over yoga pants. These also happen to be from Victoria's Secret. I did not mean to show two in a row. There's plenty of other crop tops out there from other brands. But these fold over yoga, specifically Victoria's Secret, these are just now trending. So my expectation would be other brands that have made similar styles, that those would start trending as well. But as of right now, when I'm recording this video, it's pretty much just Victoria's Secret that's really trending into the hundreds of dollars, like $130 to $180 for these yoga pants with the fold over top. And it seems that specifically the animal print is selling. So you can kind of see that blue animal print, that one for $135. Next are what I would call clubwear, or you might use the keyword rave. And this does fall within that Y2K look. This is just one example. There's many different types or different looks to these, but they're kind of all a look of going out to the club. That one went for $65. And this one is from a random brand, Poly Trading, I think is what the name of that brand is. And then next are beaded tanks. This is very similar, but these tanks will have beads as well as sequins, and these are selling for right around that $100 to $150 mark. This one does actually happen to be new with the tags, and it does happen to be from a Y2K brand. You can kind of make out the tag there called Rave. If you're looking for more, it was actually a mall brand, and you can see the tag there was $20 like in the store, but that's now selling for $150. If you're looking for more brands like that are mall type of brands from Y2K, I do have another video that you will want to check out up here. All right, and then the next type of item within Y2K are bell sleeves. And you're gonna see this trend popping up in other aesthetics that we're gonna be looking at in this video as well. This is just a quick one here. This is a random brand TNT, it says right here, and that one went for 32 plus shipping. And then the next item type is low rise jeans or flare leg jeans. Both of those together maybe might be a better way to put that. These actually do have a lace up at the waist. See if I can get a little bit better picture of that. They got a ruler over the top of that, but they are low rise, and those low rise jeans that did not move for years, did not sell, are suddenly starting to sell again. This one went for $40, and this is from the brand Jordache. So again, not any sort of huge luxury brand, just kind of an everyday brand. That one went for $40. Another big item to look for with that Y2K aesthetic is with baby doll tops. This is Hollister. Again, nothing special. Like, this is another mall brand. That one went for $130, and it's not uncommon to get 50 to 100 to even a little bit more like this one for the baby doll tops, where they're fitted through the bust and then they kind of flare out from there. I want to quickly mention that I do have a keywords that sell poster. This covers all of the aesthetic based keywords. So when you're getting your listings up and you're trying to remember what was that aesthetic, it's right here in front of you. I even have this in a handy print at home version size, and everything that we've covered in the video is on this poster visually for quick reference. All right, the next aesthetic that we'll be covering is what is called mob wife. Now, I did pull this up just in a search engine so you can kind of get a general look of this. Look, if you have not heard about this one yet, but some of the things that are really big when it comes to this aesthetic are fur as well as fur trim. So this is happens to be an all over fur jacket. This is actually a brand to me. This looks like it's straight from China. That would be my first instinct. Okay, this is a Chinese brand. I'm sure that it is. That size tag there is very typical of items that are coming from China. But that one sold for $57 almost, because of the look and because of that keyword mob wife. The next thing to look for are vests. And for vests in particular, this is a Chico's. This is a brand that I don't particularly, I'm not particularly in love with. Most of the items don't sell for that much. This one happened to sell for $40 because it does fall under that look, and the seller did use the keyword there, mob wife, there in the title. The next thing to look for with mob wife is animal print, and animal print shows up in multiple of these types of items. So it might be animal print fur, like this jacket that you're seeing here. It might be an animal print vest or animal print of some other things that we're going to talk about coming up. But this one sold for $65 over on Mercari. And then trench coats. So with the trench coat, this does happen to be, another one of those animal prints. This one went for $134. I'm going to see if I can get the tag opened up here for you to be able to get a little bit closer look at that. That's the tag. So it's nothing special. It's not any huge name brand, not a luxury brand. That one went for $134. And then another animal print pair of shoes here, little pumps, and those went for $38 on eBay. eBay, pair of boots. So that would be the next item type to look for with this trend are boots, animal print being one of those things to look for. So this pair of boots here, this is from Steve Madden, which is, an okay brand, but they usually don't sell for that much. That one did go for $40 plus shipping. And then over on Poshmark, another pair of boots here, and the black color goes really well with this look. And that can be, this covers really a lot, any sort of black boot that you're selling, whether it's more of a booty or a tall boot like this one. And this one sold for $55. And this happens to be the brand here. I don't think that it's anything special, at least not a brand that I recognize, and it's not listed here. So I don't think it's even a brand that's available to list under on Poshmark, but those did sell for $55. The next aesthetic that's trending is the keyword romantic. And this covers kind of a broad type of items, a broad look that's soft, very feminine. And another word that you can also use that's trending is coquette. And with this look, a lot of pinks make up this look, really light pinks, soft pinks, blush pinks. And there's this Jessica Simpson jacket, which is not a particular brand that I usually recommend. There's the tag there for you, but because of that look, they did use that in their keywords. That one went for $44. And then the other feature to look for with this aesthetic is lace. And this little set, it's a skirt, lace skirt. You can see the lace overlay there, as well as a lace top. This is from the brand Nanette Lepore. That one went for $70. And then ruffles are big with this aesthetic as well. This happens to be a Ralph Lauren, where it has the ruffle front, but ruffles can also appear, on sleeves, hems, shoulders, wherever else that is very common with the romantic look. This one did sell in a different currency, not in US currency. So I'm not exactly sure what the conversion is over to US currency, but it did sell for a decent amount because it did have that particular look. Another item or feature to be looking for is silk or satin. And this little silk, it's a Marc Jacobs top. It does have some buttons, so it has some just really delicate details. And then that one sold for $50. There's the tag there, that one. And it is a size 2, so it is super small. That one did sell for $50 on Poshmark. And then another feature to look for is the scoop neck. And this, you can see it does have some lace details on there as well. I also want to make a note of this, that this is a really good vintage brand. Jessica, you may have heard of Gunny Sacks. This is essentially the same company, just a different line. It does say Jessica's Gunnies is what that is. And if you're interested in more vintage items, I'm going to leave a product card over here for my vintage guide. It's freshly updated, doubled in size. It's like 150 different items and vintage brands to be on the lookout for that are selling for a lot of money. And Gunny Sacks is one of those, one of my favorite vintage brands. And then the next aesthetic is bows. And this kind of, goes really along with that feminine look of lace and ruffles. This one has pretty much all of those things that we've talked about. And this one sold for $105. It does say that it's a Japanese brand. This is the material tag. So you can kind of see it's not probably a tag that you may come across, but it may not be like, it's a really nice brand, would be kind of the impression that I would gather from that tag. But that one sold for $105 because of the look. All right, the next aesthetic that we're looking at that's trending right now is steampunk. And this is kind of a blend of Victorian as well as Industrial Revolution. And the first item that we're going to be looking at, it has a little bit of a military, is how I would describe that, a military look to it with those buttons and the lines across, as well as that high collar, but it does still have that steampunk look and it can kind of overlap a little bit. So you do notice that they did use both keywords there of military and steampunk. Again, use multiple keywords, infuse them. That's what gets your listings sold. That one sold for $227 from DKNY. A pretty common brand, not a what I would call a high value brand, a decent brand, but most items aren't selling for that much, but because of the keyword. Next are long tail, and you'll see this on jackets, maybe even shirts, where it's longer cut in the back. And so this one, it does have some other details that are popular. We're going to be talking about here in a second with this look, but that one sold for $55. And you'll see that in some mainstream brands as well. And then next is velvet. So velvet is very common with the steampunk look. You're going to see those that button detailing and that high collar again. And this little velvet jacket, this one went for, let's see, tag there. It is a Lucky brand, which is, okay. It's not super high end, but that one went for $52. And then lace up details. So I put this one on here. This is from Soft Surroundings, which is a pretty solid bread and butter brand is what I would call it. It usually doesn't sell for tons of money, but this one did sell for $69 because it does have that lace up detail there on the back. These are not very good pictures. Remember to use a lighting kit. It is well worth your money to be able to get a lighting kit and take good pictures. There are lace up details there on the sleeve. I will link down below to the lighting kit that I use. You'll find that in the description. So $69 on Poshmark for that Soft Surroundings. And then corsets. You're going to see corsets in another couple of the aesthetics that we're looking at. So they can fall within multiple of these aesthetics. But this one has a little bit more of that steampunk look to it because it has some of that ribbing, the lace up detail there. That one went for $60 from a Hot Topic brand. And then metal details are really common with the steampunk look. This one happens to be from Harley Davidson. This little halter vest is what I would call that. And with those grommets, you can see those grommets there along the front of that, along both sides of the zipper. That one went for $62. And then this one I threw up here. I wanted to ask you about this. Let me know in the comments down below if you think that this falls within the steampunk aesthetic. I personally don't think that it does, but it was put in here in the title. It is a brand that's, it's not anything special. It's called Studio Y. Pictures again are not the best, but you may have seen this brand before. And that one went for $50. That is literally the only keyword that they use. They use some in here, puffy sleeve, but there's not a whole lot of other keywords besides steampunk. So let me know in the comments if you think that's steampunk or not, but it did still sell for $50 using that keyword. Next type of item within steampunk are tall boots. And so this pair of boots, this one went for $50. I do see they put some other keywords in here that are good to use, like cosplay. And I just did a quick comparison for this brand. It's called Do Farina, but I did pull up some other sold items on Poshmark on the same platform where there was sold. So you see there's a pair there for $50, but there's other items like a pair of pumps here that sold for $8, pair of shoes there for $17, $16. Seeing some more of those boots. Another pair of shoes here for $4, $8. So not, a big dollar brand, but because of that look, those boots sold for more. And then ankle boots. So this one, you're going to see that button detailing again and some of, really kind of a little bit of a ruffle, not too much. I blanked on what word it is. I'm looking for subtle, I think. Subtle ruffle there on these boots. Those ones went for $52 from a brand called Eric Michael. And same kind of story with this. When you look at solds from this brand, they're not selling for a whole lot. So it looks like this pair is new with tags that went for $7. Some here, those are brand new for $40. You're seeing $15. $20, $21, pair for $7. So it really is about the look and the style. And then Crown Vintage. So another little pair of ankle boots here. And these are actually pretty worn. Those ones sold for $85. And same kind of story with this. When you look over into the solds on Poshmark, you're seeing $12, $13, $5. $12. So moral of the story, it definitely pays to use those keywords.
And real quick, if you're doing everything right, but your items are still just sitting, that can be a really frustrating place to be. And it's probably not the items themselves. Inside of my Empowered Reseller membership, we deep dive into a new lucrative clothing niche every single month so that you can know exactly what sells and so that you can start making consistent daily sales. And you're not trying to figure all this out on your own. You get a clear path, help when you need it, and a really supportive community to do this with. If that sounds like something you'd like, just click the first link in the description below this video and you'll be able to see what the current month's topic is as well as how to join us. And we would love to welcome you in.
All right, the next aesthetic that's really trending right now is whimsy goth. This is an express dress, another mall brand. This one's sold over on Mercari for $118. And what you're looking for with this aesthetic, with this dress that we're talking about, is that velvet. So you're going to see that velvet detailing here. And that is really big for the whimsy goth look. If you're wondering what whimsy goth is, it is a subculture, like a group of people that identify together. They maybe dress similarly. And it's kind of a mix of goth and witchcore, but it's not either of those. It's its own subculture. I did have to look this up because I did not know this, but there's lots of different subcultures like this, and they make really good keywords to use, and they end up trending because people will try and, fit in with that look. And so this happens to be one of them. And then another feature from this look is lace. This is a dress here. I'm going to just quickly scroll through some of these pictures, but you can see all of the lace that's used on this dress. And this one sold for $202. This is, I want to point this out because this is really important. Brand and material tags are missing. A lot of resellers will just not even pick up an item if there's no brand tag, if there's no size tag, if there's no material tag. This seller was smart enough to pick this up, still list it, put those measurements, but that sold for $202, even with those missing tags. And then the next, bell sleeves. So we hit on bell sleeves with the Y2K look. And so this is going to be one where you see in multiple aesthetics. Again, put multiple aesthetics. It's not going to hurt if you have 3 to 5 aesthetics listed for an item as long as it fits within that look. And so this shirt, it's called Speed Control is the name of the brand there. This is kind of, another one of those no-name brands. It is, it's out there, but it's not, a big ticket item. But that one did sell for $56 because of the look of this. And they did use fairy in the title. And then the other thing to look for with this look is satin or silk. And with this is a beaded dress here. I do want to point out that this dress sold for $800. And this is a brand, Adriana Papel, or their line Papel Boutique is actually what this is labeled as. So I went ahead and pulled up from that same boutique line other solds, and we got a jacket there for $8, dress there for $49, $34, but nothing selling for $800. But because of that look, that dress, and because the seller used the right keywords down here in the description as well as their title, that one went for $800. Like, that's an easy way to 10 to 20x your investment, to 10 to 20x your revenue just by using keywords. To look for with this aesthetic is mesh overlay. You've seen this in a couple of the dresses that I've already showed, but you can get a pretty good picture of that there, how there's mesh over the top. And that one went for $150. That's from BCBG Max Ariza. Definitely a brand that you want to use caution with. Everything does not sell for this much, but just because of the styles and the keywords that were used. And then here's another example of a mesh overlay dress. This one went for $150. This is from a brand called Morgan and Company. And I did go ahead and pull this up within Mercari, which is not the best search engine, but you're seeing, $16, $24, $28, $18. I'm not sure if that's actually one from the same brand, but not big prices like $150, but because of that look, that's why that sold for that much. The next thing to look for with the whimsy goth aesthetic, there's another dress there with that overlay and tulle. The next thing to look for with this aesthetic are skirts. This is an example of a skirt here that has that kind of look. You're noticing as you're seeing these, a lot of them are dark colored. It doesn't necessarily have to be black, but this is more of a darker colored skirt. And this is from Coldwater Creek, so a brand that, most items probably are not worth reselling, but this one did go for $32 because of the keywords whimsy goth. And you may also see dark fairy. So that can be a, pretty good overlap with the whimsy goth look as well. And then the next thing to look for with this aesthetic are chunky shoes. And you're going to notice that these may, overlap with Y2K as well as, a lot of these looks that we just looked at, like that bell sleeve. This pair of shoes, this is from Zara. Those went for $52. And then we got a pair of Clarks that sold as well. And Clarks don't normally, most of them don't sell for this much. So $59. They are kind of a patent leather, the shiny leather. And so those went for $59 on Poshmark. And then the next thing to look for with this aesthetic is a corset top. And so this is an example here. This one sold for $60. See if I can get a look there, but you can see kind of that corset detail, that milkmaid top, kind of a square neck with the ruffle across the bust. That is big for this look as well. So that one went for $60 on Mercari. The next aesthetic that's trending, and there's lots of trending aesthetics. I just have, I'm only covering a few in this video because we're almost already at the hour mark. But this one is the fairy core aesthetic. And this, you're going to notice, again, a lot of overlaps with whimsy goth, as well as a little bit maybe even of Y2K. The fairy core look has a lighter look to it than, say, the whimsy goth that we just looked at, lighter in color, sometimes a little bit lighter in the materials as well. This one is a jean skirt. It's got that hem there. And so with this aesthetic, I'm seeing a lot of the asymmetrical. So you're going to notice that that hem is a little bit asymmetrical. As well as the kind of ruffle or flaring at the bottom gives it a little bit of a feminine look, and that is very typical of the fairy core. Is it's a little bit more on the feminine side. And this one went for $50 for kind of an off-brand jean skirt. With that look, another example of a jean skirt here that has those tiers. So anything tiered, whether it's a top, a skirt, a dress, that's going to be another look that can fall within that fairy core or fairy aesthetic. And that one went for $60 on Poshmark. And then another one on Poshmark. And I thought this was a really good example of the textures that are really that can make up part of this aesthetic. So you're going to see with this top here that there's texturing of crochet along the top. There's some, I'm thinking they're beads. There's some darting here in the blouse and the top, and that one went for $60, but it really does have kind of a three-dimensional textured look, and that can be really common with this aesthetic. And then florals are also common within the fairy core aesthetic. And this dress here, you can see it's just kind of a light pink. They did point out, again, no material tag, no size tag. Most resellers would pass that by. This person did pick it up, and it sold for $35 because, they used those. And you'll notice that they used whimsy goth as well as fairy core, as well as feminine. They could have used that romantic keyword that we talked about earlier. And then that sold for $35, even without any sort of tags on it. Another example of floral, this is a brand called Robbie B, which is not a particularly, great brand. It's right there. It is 100% silk, so that does help the price a little bit, but it definitely has that feminine look to it. They did use fairy core in there. That one went for $50 on Poshmark. You'll also notice rhinestones with this aesthetic. So this is an example of a dress here. It's got some rhinestone detailing on the front. I'm going to zoom in on that, some beadwork there on the front. And that one sold for $50 on Poshmark. It is a 9 West and it is silk. So that can help a little bit, just be the fact that it is a nicer quality material. And then next feature to look for with this aesthetic is tulle, and that's that kind of mesh material, and you're going to see all of those layers that are within that skirt. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little bit better, but just a lot of layers in there, and that one went for $54. The next feature to look for with the fairy aesthetic is that bell sleeve again. So you're seeing how huge that bell sleeve is right now in a lot of these aesthetics. And there's that sleeve there, and you see how wide that is. And it does have a little bit of that floral print as well, which is common with this aesthetic. That one went for $35. And then again, that corset. So that, again, another one that's showing up within multiple aesthetics. Go ahead and use multiple aesthetics if it fits within those. And so this is an example of one here. And you're seeing that lace up detailing along the top, as well as some lace and floral mixed in there. And that one went for $85 on Mercari.
So now you've seen how much style actually matters. But here's the problem. Most people, they stop there. They might recognize the style, but they're still not using the exact words that buyers are typing in. So next, I'm going to show you the keywords that are getting items found every single day.
All right, so this first item that we're looking at is using the keyword cottagecore as well as feminine. Now, with these videos where I'm showing you what is sold now, what I do and how I put these together is I sort sold listings by most recently sold so that these are the freshest available to you. They're basically from the morning of this video. It does take me a little while to get the video edited, get it published out to you. So there's a little bit of a delay there, but these are really fresh sales. And so this is one where they are using some of those aesthetic based keywords. Now, sometimes when I have a video idea, it does change a little bit as I'm putting the video together. And this is a case that really did apply because as I started pulling in listings that happened, the sales that happened just today, there were very few where they actually used aesthetic based keywords. So those are cottagecore, feminine. That has to do with the look of the item. Most sellers are just sticking with physical keywords, the keywords that you can see, such as this is short sleeve, but they're leaving out all of those aesthetic style based keywords. And this leaves a huge opportunity for sellers like you who are watching this video and who are in the know to be able to use those aesthetic based keywords, be able to get your listings in front of the right buyers. And I'm hearing from so many of you that are watching these videos about keywords that you've gone back and infused your current listings and suddenly there's traffic on them. Suddenly there's sales. So that is my hope with this video, that you're able to go back into the listings that you already have, that you've already spent time on, money on, and be able to turn them around and start bringing in sales. So again, cottagecore and feminine with this one. In this listing, they also did use some keywords down in the description. So on eBay, you can use keywords in the description just very casually in a paragraph format, or listed out just like this seller did here, where they said style details, and then they have listed feminine, romantic, ruffle, party, spring, summer, Easter. The other place where you can use keywords in addition to the title are here in the item specifics. And there's multiple places to be able to do that. Theme is one of the places where you can put in some of those aesthetic based keywords. There's a few options there inside of eBay's pull down. There's also, of course, any of these where you're putting in the sleeve type, the dress length. Those are all keywords as well. Neckline, that's another keyword. And those are really built in to eBay to help shoppers find the items that you're looking for. And of course, the third place to put keywords is directly in the title. A lot of times there's not enough room, and so that's why you would want to add more to the description. This is a dress from Laura Ashley where they did use that cottage core keyword. They also have drop waist in here, and that just means that waist is a little bit lower. That one sold for $95. This is a tank top from Miss Sook. I'm not sure if I'm saying that brand correctly. Very common brand. Definitely a bolo to watch for. But with this one, they use the keyword of quiet luxury. So this is a good example of a keyword that you can use for an item that is more relatively plain. Like there's nothing really special about this. There's no sort of design on this one. Some other good keywords for this type of item are things like basic and capsule, like you're wearing it in a capsule wardrobe. So by the way, all of these are sold items that I am showing. It does say down here on the picture, and any price mentioned, that is without a best offer accepted. When a best offer is accepted, there's actually a strikeout through this price as well as the words best offer accepted. In those sorts of cases, when I'm pointing out the price, I'll always try and show you what the actual best offer amount is. And I do have a video where I walk you through how to do that for yourself when you're doing your own research and you're going, how much did this actually sell for? That video will walk you through how to do that. This next one is one from the Free People brand, but they use some other keywords in here to help get it in front of the right buyer. So boho, that's probably one of the more mainstream, like more used, widely used keyword, but it's still very popular and a lot of shoppers are still looking for this look. So boho is one of those aesthetic, but then they also use some other keywords in here like crochet. They could have also used French with this one. And those are more physical based keywords, but they still, definitely help get items in front of buyers. So that one sold for 49. This is another one where they use that keyword boho. They did type out the whole bohemian. They also used geo for geometric. And this is a brand that's called Savannah Jane. And it does have a lot of that geometric design there around the neckline of that dress. Now with this one, this is a brand that's called Rising is International. So I do want to point this one out because this is one to watch out for. And with these, you're going to see a lot of this kind of block and patchwork design. They did use some really good keywords in here. Again, boho, that's another one, that's widely used, as I mentioned, but whimsical as well as cottagecore are the other keywords that they used in that listing, in that title. Now, a lot of people are not, what I'm noticing as I am doing this research, a lot of people are not putting, a lot of sellers are not putting those keywords in the description. They're leaving the description fairly well blank. This is one where the seller actually did use keywords in the item description, and they used it in a very natural way in a paragraph format where it's not just a big list. So it says features a whimsical, romantic fairy design, and they explain a little bit more about this item. And they really just infuse that description with a lot of keywords. So that's again another really good place and a way that you can do that very naturally. So with this one, this is a Y2K dress. This is from a brand, Jonathan Merton. Not super familiar with it, but this one definitely sold for the style. And those style-based, those keywords that they use with this one, in addition to Y2K, which is kind of the era, kind of the look of items, right around the turn of the millennium. The keywords that they used were whimsical as well as romantic. Now, this is a dress where they just really infused this one with keywords because this one didn't happen to have a brand. It does have a material tag, but it didn't have a brand tag as part of it. So there's the material tag, but it's not any sort of special brand. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it. So it's got some bows up there at the shoulder straps, definitely floral print. And they used some keywords of retro, homecoming, coquette, feminine, cottage, and all of those do fit really well with this item. So I would recommend, and they did down here in the description include even more. So I would recommend 3 to 5 that really describe your item well. If you've got room for a little bit more, or you feel like there's more that fit, then you can add those down there in the description just like they did. But I wouldn't go too overboard, and definitely I would not recommend using keywords that don't fit with the item. So for example, gothic, goth. I would not use those keywords, with this item. That's considered keyword spamming and can actually hurt you in search results. This is one where they used again, it's a kind of a very basic item, just like that tank top that we looked at earlier that was a solid print. With this one, they actually use the keyword minimalist. So that's another good keyword to use for these kind of more plain items. And you'll notice they also use that keyword of quiet luxury as well. So this is an Eileen Fisher dress. And then that one went for about $31. This is a London Fog trench coat. And with this one, they use the keywords of business as well as career. And then they also mentioned that the coat has a paisley lining. So you can see that print there as I zoom in on that one. With this nightgown, this is from a brand called Reselling. This one, they just use the keyword cottage. So it does have kind of a little bit of lace detail up here or embroidery detail up there at the top. And so that is something that really does fit with that cottage or cottage core keyword. Now, a lot of sellers, as I mentioned, are missing out. They are not using those. So again, that makes a really good opportunity for you to come in and be able to fulfill that need, because that is the way that shoppers are shopping for items, is based off of those looks, especially if it's an item that's not a big name brand or even unbranded items. That can be a really good way to get your items in front of the right buyers. This is a dress where they use the keyword pinup, and you can see that it has that halter neckline or halter around the neck, as well as kind of a sweetheart neckline on that dress. So they did use pinup as well as retro with that item. This is an example of an unbranded item. Now, I do not recommend spamming and putting in other brands that do not apply. So they did use Free People. This is not a Free People item. So I definitely do not recommend that. And they did, in the description, they did clarify that it is unbranded. They did a little bit more spamming as far as different brands in here. And they say, you know, wear with your favorite Free People bell bottoms, Birkenstocks, and Gucci bag. That's probably a pretty good example of spamming a little bit when it comes to those other brands, because that's not what this is. And you don't want to be misleading. You don't want to violate any of eBay's rules. So let's talk about what they did right and the keywords that they did use correctly with this. And so you're going to see Chamayo. This one keyword I do see being used quite a lot. There is a definite look with that keyword. It is a location in New Mexico. So that is that keyword. And the serape refers to kind of that blanket that is the traditional Mexican blanket or poncho. And then they also use bohemian as well as Western and waterfall for that one, I'm assuming because of the front drape-like on that. So that one sold for $69, even with it being an unbranded item. Now, this next one, I was going to start down here in the description, and here they did put in quite a few keywords: bohemian, witchy, whimsy, goth, cottagecore, coastal grandma, fairy core, artsy hippie, nature fairy. So quite a few that they did put in there. So let's take a look at what this item is. And this is one that is, again, a little bit more on the plain side. It's a solid color, not any sort of crazy print, not any sort of crazy design, but a lot of those keywords that they did use do fit with that. So in the title, they did use boho as well as whimsy. It's a button-up hooded vest. So there's what the back looks like. It has a little bit of kind of a looseness to it, so I could see how it could fit with maybe that fairy look, that whimsical look for that item. And then that one sold for $30 without it being any sort of huge name brand. So the brand on this one is actually For Cynthia is the brand name. With this one, this is a handbag chain strap, but this one has a tapestry design on it. So this is one that falls under more of that physical features that you can see. This is another bag, and they did apply some of aesthetic-based keywords like bohemian and festival to this bag. So I did want to point that out. And they did use some other keywords to describe kind of the pattern of the item, Aztec and Southwestern, for this bag. I'll give you a few more pictures of this. So some stripes as well as some geometric designs. And then that one sold for $40. This is another bag while we're on the topic of bags. It's actually what is called a bucket bag. So you can see that it's flat on the bottom, and then it has the drawstring around the top. That's kind of the typical shape of a bucket bag. So there's the bottom there. And that is one of the really important pieces when it comes to selling bags, is being able to name it correctly for what somebody would be looking for. So that one sold for $60. Another bag for you real quick. This is a crescent sling. So you can see that by the shape there. That's from Madewell, and that one went for $55. And then this is a tooled leather. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that. But you can see how the flowers there, that is the tooling. That is what that refers to, is just kind of a decorative design into the leather. Not any big name brand is actually unbranded, but because the seller was able to describe this really well, then that one sold for $30. Another bag real quick. This is what is called a doctor's bag. So you're going to see how there is a frame across the top. There's a metal frame across the top of this bag. And so it opens up just like, a doctor's bag might. Maybe you had a doctor's bag as a kid and had, doctor's toys in that. That is what this is. And so that one sold for $65 from Brighton. Now, I do have a poster that covers specifically bags and all of those different types of bags, because again, I know it can be really hard to remember, especially when you're on the spot of trying to type up listings. So I'm going to link to that resource over here. This is another tapestry item. So we looked at one tapestry item that was a bag. This one is actually a vest. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that for you. So you can see there's somebody riding a horse there. It looks like some garden grounds. And they used with this one a couple keywords here, one of Victorian, and then another one here of grandma core. So I think both of those do work pretty well with that item. This is a brand that does not usually sell for very much. So it's called Flying Tomato. Maybe you've seen that. I've come across it a few times and gone, oh, this must be a good brand. It's an interesting name, and it's not really. So this is just a dress, but they did fit in some keywords in here in the title that did help this item sell for a little bit more money. So the boho is one of them, as well as Western and hippie. So that one sold for almost $31, having those extra keywords in there, getting it in front of the right buyers. This is a Michael Kors item, and they did use a keyword in here of bedazzled. So this is an example where it's a more subtle item. It does have a little bit of a open knit to it, a little bit of metallic thread woven in there. So that one sold for $63 using that keyword. This is one where we're going to look at the description first. The keywords in the description are Y2K, boho, festival, Ren Fair, pirate, and fairy. So Renaissance Fair. Had to think for a second on that one. And this one is actually a belt. So they did duplicate most of those keywords that I just mentioned. They did put those in the title as well. So you'll see them there in the title. And then this is what this belt looks like. And with this one, they did a really good job describing the item. This one sold for $40. And you see it does have some wear there in the leather of that item, some fraying at the edges of that. So $40 for that. This is from Escada, and this is definitely a Bolo brand, definitely a higher end brand. So there's the tag if you haven't seen that before, but they did pair, a good brand along with another keyword that's really trending right now, and that is romantic. And so that blouse sold for $195. This is another item where it's a little bit more of a plain item. And you might be going, okay, I've got plain items. What kind of keywords do I use? So this is a brand 120% lino, I'm assuming is maybe how you say it's a linen. And the keyword that they use with this one is minimalist. So again, minimalist, basic, capsule, any of those types of keywords can fit these more plain items. So that one sold for about $66. This is from the brand Flax. Another one where any of those keywords that I just mentioned, basic, capsule, minimalist, would work really well. But the other keyword that works with a lot of these Flax items is what is called log and look. And that's kind of a layered look, is the translation of log and look. And they are often oversized items as well. And so then that one sold for $32. Now with this one, this is actually an Old Navy jacket. And you'll see here on the tag, this is a little bit more unusual tag. So it does say mechanics here and then Old Navy. So this is a chore coat. Here's what this looks like. So they use the keyword, chore coat. That's just the style that it is, as well as it is Sherpa lined, and that's just kind of a high pile fleece. Fortunately, it doesn't look like they have a great picture of what the Sherpa looks like on the inside of this one. And I also did want to mention this. So they have this really cool measurement to be able to write down the measurements, mark if there's any flaws on that item. And that can be really helpful to speed up your listing process. So I do have cards available in my shop. I'm going to link to over here. This next one's another bag, and with this one, they used the keyword hippie, and this is a Coach bag. There you can see in the title that they used the keyword hippie. There's what that looks like. That one sold for $70, and then I'm also noticing that they used the keyword saddle bag, which does describe that item pretty well. Now, this is a Zara jacket, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this because this one has quite a few details. It's actually missing one button there. It has a definite military look, so they did use military there in the title of the item, and then that one sold for about $43. This is a blouse from the Gap. Here's what this looks like. It is not the best pictures. I did get a close up here. And so this is what I wanted to point out with this one is it is a small flower print. There's the Gap tag. And that plain, just button up shirt from the Gap sold for $30. And the keyword that they used here for that type of print, that little all over flower print, is what is called ditzy. So you'll see that in the title. This is a button-up shirt from Liz Claiborne. This is what is called chambray, which is very similar to denim, just a little bit lighter. And then that one sold for $90. They also used a keyword there of embellished because it does have that eagle on the back that has that embellishment. Now, this is an Ann Taylor item. This is actually a suit jacket, but I did want to zoom in on this fabric to show you the herringbone. So that is another thing that I see a lot of sellers struggle with is the difference between herringbone and houndstooth and often getting the two interchanged. So with herringbone, it does look like fish bones and it does kind of have a little bit of a striped look to it. That blazer sold for $31 and the seller did put herringbone in there. This is houndstooth on the other hand. So this is a Ralph Lauren bag. So just wanted to put those two side by side. With this one, this is a Coach bag, and this does have to do with the print of the item is why I'm showing you this one. But this is actually what is called op art, which is optical illusion art. And that is a keyword that buyers are searching for. So they did use that for this item because it does have a little bit of an optical illusion look to that. And then that one sold for $35. Now I do have a brand new poster that specifically covers different types of fabrics or prints to know about. This is super in-depth. This is more than just stripe and solid. I guarantee that you will learn new terms from this that will help you be able to better describe your item. So I'm going to link to that over here. This next blouse is another unbranded item, but they did a really good job describing this item. So not the best of pictures. As you can see, it's pretty dark. It looks like quite a bit of stuff in the background. And there's a lot of lace on this item as well as ruffles. So they did use those keywords, of course, of ruffle and lace. But so they did put another keyword in here of pirate as well as cosplay. And that one sold for $35, even with this being an unbranded item. This is a jacket that sold where they're using that keyword of nautical. So anytime you have a peacoat like that with that notched collar, that can be a really good time to use that keyword. And then that one sold for $50 plus shipping. This is a pair of shoes where I had to show this one because the seller could have done quite a bit better on describing this item. So they pretty much just put loafer and then, which I'm not even sure if that is the word that I would have used with this one, and then the color. So with this one, let's talk about some of the keywords that maybe should have been used instead. So one of them would be brogue, and that just has to do with the decorative punching of holes. And so you can see that definitely has that. You can use that keyword for any shoe that has that kind of look to it, that design to it. The other keyword that they could have used here is wingtip, and that just kind of refers to that seagull. Like when you were a kid and drew the seagull, that is what that wingtip is. So they could have used that as one of their keywords. They could have also used derby or Oxford, which refers to the style of the shoe. Technically, this is a derby, but a lot of shoppers do use the term Oxford. And they could have also used maybe chunky or platform with that one. It still sold for $50, but I saw this item and I thought really a lot more keywords should fit with this item. A lot more keywords could have been put into use. This is another pair of shoes, and they did use chunky on this one as well as platform. So these are Converse, and you can definitely see how thick those are there. And they did put that in the title, and then those sold for $55. This is a pair of Western cowboy boots. So they did put Western as well as cowboy boots. Those are kind of the obvious keywords when it comes to this one. But what I wanted to point out here is that they did use the keyword snip toe. So that's just a style of toe, round, square, those are pretty obvious. But with a lot of the Western boots, they do have what is called a snip toe. So you can see that it's a little bit cut off. That point is cut off. And so that is what is called a snip toe. I do have all these terms and more when it comes to shoes on my brand new shoe poster. This covers every keyword you would ever need to know when it comes to shoes. So I'm going to link to that over here.
And real quick, all of the tools and the resources that I've been mentioning throughout this video, I actually give free to members inside of the Empowered Reseller. The link is in the description below this video, or you can go to empoweredreseller.com. At this point, you might be realizing small changes in your wording can make a big difference in sales. But what I'm about to show you next, this can take an ordinary item and turn it into something that people are actively searching for. Because these are keywords that are tied to pop culture, to movies and TV shows and celebrities, and they can completely change how your item is seen and how much it's worth.
Next, I've got the keyword matrix, and this is from the movie The Matrix, and this is applicable to anything that's leather, especially black leather and trench coats, as well as even tall boots. So this is over on eBay. eBay and Poshmark seem to be both doing pretty well with this keyword. You're going to see these tall boots. That's what I'm referring to. Those are actually Guess, which is, I'd like to point out, those sold for $150. And I do have a few items to be able to share with you. So it's not just coats, that is the majority, but you're going to see some other items as well. This is from a line by Wilson Studio called from Wilson's Leather called Pele Studio, and then that jacket sold for $79. Got a Zara. This is a faux leather, and that one went for almost $30 using that matrix keyword. Got a trench coat here. This one is from Wilson's Leather with Wilson's Leather tag on it there. That one went for $130. You're seeing matrix there in the title. This is what's called oxblood, is that color. So it's not quite, it's not black. So you can use this keyword with other items that aren't necessarily black. It's just the majority of items that are selling are black. This one sold for almost $70. And then over on Poshmark, similar types of items are selling, but there's, also tops as well as skirts. I did happen to filter down into jackets and coats, but I will show you some of the other items. So this is a good example of an item that is actually not quite what I would call even faux leather. It's more of kind of a shiny. That gives you a pretty good idea of what that fabric looks like. This is actually Calvin Klein, and that one went for $80. Got a Jones of New York long coat here. Again, this is not about the brands. This is not, necessarily a brand I would ever recommend sourcing, but that one sold for $125 because of the look. This is an example of one that's not black, Wilson's Leather, but still you'll see it there in the description, Y2K Matrix Vibes, and that one sold for $55 with that leather trim. This is a jacket, not even a trench coat, but just black leather, LNR exclusively for Nordstrom. That's the brand there. And that one went for $150. I wanted to point this dress out because this is a brand, Skies Are Blue. It normally does not sell for very much at all. And it's kind of a suede-ish faux leather look to it, and that one went for $30. Here's another good example of a brand that normally doesn't sell for as much just based off of the brand White House Black Market, but this tank sold for $35. Got another one here that is not leather or faux leather, but it has that wet look, and so you'll see that in the keywords as well there in the title, very matrix. And they did a really good job of just using keywords naturally, not necessarily in a big long list. The seller did. So they said, I could see this on all the rad women in the matrix. And then that tank sold for $35. Next keyword has to do with Taylor Swift. You can't go anywhere these days without hearing about Taylor. And one of the keywords that is popping up is Swifty. And I think that's just like her followers. I never really got on that whole bandwagon, but I'm just sharing in this video what I've learned from reselling and what is happening in the fashion world with these keywords, not necessarily from a guru when it comes to pop culture. Definitely from a reseller standpoint. So you're going to see items that are influenced by her style, as well as items that are more, officially licensed merchandise. So I'm seeing, sweatshirt there for $95, but there's going to be other items that are selling just based off of her look. And so I have a few items of those to be able to show you. These results here, the search result is actually Taylor Swift. The previous one we were looking at is Swifty. So if you're looking at saving room in your titles, I would recommend the Swifty. The people who are going to be shopping for that are going to, probably put that in their keyword. This item I wanted to pull up because this is a brand that I, would not recommend sourcing, but because of that, they use Taylor Swift in the keyword. That skirt went for $22. Now, this is a sweater I thought was interesting because this is actually a dupe sweater. If this was a real officially licensed, these are selling officially licensed, are selling for a few $100s, but even a duplicate look-alike that is sold for $45. This is another good example of a item where it's sold based off of the look and not because of the brand. So Joseph A, you may have seen that, come across that outsourcing, but because of Swifty there in the title, that one went for $25. Here's another good example of kind of Taylor's look. There's the tool tag there. Her look has evolved throughout the years. There are many looks, many different types of looks that you could really use that keyword for. You'll see Swifty, and then that one went for $40. Here's a torrid sequined open kind of drape jacket. That one went for $42. And this is an item that she wore. So if you happen to come across any items that she actually wore, I would recommend, if you're not sure, which for me, I'm not. So I would just use the Google Lens to take a picture of the item you have, and then that should hopefully pull up if it happens to be worn on Taylor Swift or another celebrity or in a certain movie. That could be a good way to be able to identify those keywords. So this sweater happens to be from Levi's, and let me see if I can go back to that one. That actually sold for about $80. They're selling for right around $70 to $100 for that particular sweater. Now this is one that's interesting because it is from Old Navy, and it's an extra small. So a lot of times those extra smalls, those really small sizes don't sell well, or they don't sell for as much money. But this one actually sold for right about $50 for this item. And there's a lot of these selling from Old Navy. I don't know if it's a specific item, but it does look very similar to what she wore. And so that's gray and orange. And you can see the price there. That one went for $50 for that. Here's another sequin dress. And this was actually from Free People. That sequin dress went for $35 using Swifty there in the title. Now over on Poshmark, I had a little bit harder time pulling up sold items that have Swifty, because most of the items that were coming up actually have the word Swifty on them. But if you happen to come across these are some good money. So you're seeing, 90, 90, 60, 80 for these items, but I was able to kind of sift through these and to be able to pull up some items that are more of, her style. So there is that Old Navy shirt again, that same one. There's lots of these selling on eBay, on Poshmark as well. That one went for $50. I did want to point out this one, which I thought was interesting. This is actually a reworked or upcycled jacket that a seller who's very creative decided to put Taylor Swift on that, on the back of that shirt. And that one went for $55. These are in use condition. I did go and look at the seller. So if you want to go and take a look at her items, she has some really cool items. They're not all Taylor Swift, a huge variety of different types of items, but they are all upcycled. But that can be a good reminder if you're crafty that these can be quite a bit of money, or if you're not so crafty like myself, if you happen to come across these one-of-a-kind items that somebody's done some artwork on, they can be actually a really good profitable flip that a lot of resellers, might pass over. Now, another keyword that is selling really well on Poshmark, not so much on eBay, I'm going to show you that, is Big Bang, and specifically as seen on. So ASO, if you haven't seen that before, that just means as seen on. And you're seeing a lot of the outfits that were worn in the show by the different characters. Now, one thing that you're going to notice with a lot of these as seen on, whether it's Big Bang or other TV shows or movies, a lot of times it's more the women's items that are selling more than the male characters. So with this, it's definitely the women's characters items that are selling. I'm going to show you some of these specifically that are selling, as well as some items that are more, a little bit influenced by that style. This is a tank top. This was seen here on the on Kaylee. That one went for $40. Here's another, or on on Penny, the character, is what I should have said. Here's another shirt that was the same as what she wore on the show. Not the exact one worn during production is what they put in the description. That one went for $85. Got another sweater that she wore with butterflies on it. That one went for $85. Here's a pair of Lucky brand shorts, and it says in the description, as seen on Penny and Big Bang Theory, those shorts went for $50. Here's a dress that's similar to what she wore, and then that one sold for $65. This is actually from Guess. Now, over on eBay, I mentioned it's not such a big deal, so I did put in the search results Big Bang and then ASO. So I probably could have done a little bit better job on the search result, but I put in the same as what I had put in on Poshmark. Only one sold item comes up. So, not quite as big of a keyword over on eBay. Now, Friends, this is another one that really influenced the Friends TV show that really is still today influencing fashion. Definitely when it comes to women's fashion, a little bit with men's, but you're going to see the majority of the items that are selling are more based off of the women's fashion in the show. And with this, I do have several items here that just kind of go along with that look that aren't necessarily, I'm going to show you those here in a second. So this is just a dress V-neck. That one went for $42. It's from a brand called Be Smart, but it just looks similar. They did use 90s and Friends there in the description. So $42 for that. This is a sweater that's similar to what may have been seen on the show. It says Big City, so it's not like officially licensed, anything like that. Just a similar look. And you see their Friends 90s. That one went for $45. Got a dress here from Coldwater Creek. And, again, they're using Friends for the title there. And that one went for $35. This is a sheer wrap top. It says Friends Style, and this is actually from a Target collaboration, Paul and Joe for Target. That one went for $30. Here's another dress that's similar from that style. It says here in the description, as well as the title, Friends. This is actually from Old Navy, by the way. This one went for $40 for that dress. Here is a similar, it says as seen on, but it's not, you can tell by looking at it, it's not the same. It says alternate version. This one actually went for $70 for this little top, just because it's similar to what was, worn on the show. I cover everything inside of the pop culture keyword guide. This is brand new. This is going to cover everything that you need to know when it comes to TV shows, movies, celebrities. It's going to be super helpful to be able to source better items, to source more items, and to be able to get more money for the items that you maybe even already have listed, to go and start infusing those with those keywords. And then I wanted to also show you some as sold on items from Friends, because in a lot of these cases, these items can sell for into the hundreds of dollars. So you're seeing one there for $359, one for 190. I think the most I saw was maybe $600. Here's 200, 250, 120, 125. So these can be some really good money. I would go ahead and use that Google lens and see if other items pull up that are the same. So it can be really hard to keep track, impossible basically to keep track. I would use that Google lens. Here's a jacket. And this was worn by the character similar to Phoebe on the show. So you'll see that there in the title. That can be a good keyword, is to use those character titles. That one sold for $100 from the brand St. John's Bay. Here's another as seen on sweater. That one sold for $75 with the moose on it. And there's, I had to pull up this seller because I thought it was interesting. Their name is actually Cinema Spells, but they do specialize in as seen on items. So if you want to take a look at that for other as seen on items, I can give you some good ideas. Here's another shirt that's kind of interesting. And that one went for $95. And it's not about the brand with these. You're going to notice in the description, this is from the Cinema Spells seller as well. You're going to notice in the description, even in the pictures, they're not showing the brand. They're not saying what the brand is. It's all about it being on one of the characters as seen on the Friends TV show, or whatever other TV show movie that the item happens to be from. Here's another as seen on vest. This is actually DKNY is the brand that this vest is from. You see the tag there. That one went for $139. Got another vest here, beaded. I don't see a brand on this one, but this was a similar or the same as what was worn on the show. That one went for $160. Over on eBay, if I put in Friends ASO as seen on, that's not coming up with nearly as many. It actually came back, it says 10 search results, or maybe a few more related down here, but you're not seeing as nearly as many. You are seeing one from Joey for $300. Over on Poshmark, I didn't see any men's. I'm sure there probably are, but just worth noting that it's not as big of deal over on eBay. This next keyword that I've got for you is from the Outlander TV series. Now with this one, there are a lot of items that are officially licensed where they collaborated with a brand like Hot Topic or Torrid. So I'm going to just kind of quickly scroll through these and I'll show you specific items, but you're seeing a lot of plaid as well as cable knit with this, even that kind of trench coat style. And with these, again, I would go ahead and start using those keywords, because the people who are shopping for those items, even if it's not necessarily from a officially licensed merchandise, it's still going to show up in those search results when buyers are shopping. So this is an example of a coat, plaid. This is from Torrid. This one does happen to be new with tags. Most everything I've tried to show in this is pre-owned, but this one sold for $106 in new condition. Here's a jacket, and you're going to see there on the tag it says Outlander, the series exclusive Torrid collection, or it may say exclusive Hot Topic collection. That one sold for $65. Got a cape here. This one went for $65 as well. A sweater, and this is exclusive Torrid collection. That one went for $53. So it's just kind of a basic wrap sweater. I don't even know that it has any cable knitting on it, but still, $50 for a Torrid item is pretty good. Here's a cable knit item. This is kind of a wrap. Or you could use this keyword with scarves as well that are cable knit that have this kind of look to them. This one went for $45. This is actually a not any sort of officially licensed merchandise from the show, but it's a brand that's pretty good called Fisherman out of Ireland, a smaller brand. But I would, like I mentioned, go ahead and recommend using that keyword in listings that have that cable knit, have that plaid, have that general kind of aesthetic to the item. This is a skirt, again, from Torrid. That went for $53. A throw blanket, that one went for $35. Another dress here, this one went for $35. There's the tag where it says exclusive Hot Topic collection. So that's another plaid. Here's another plaid dress from Torrid that went for $45. A dress that's not plaid I had to show, so a little bit different print to that. and that is from Hot Topic. That one went for $30. Now over on eBay, this is not such a big keyword. I did put in Outlander series because there is a brand that is called Outlander that has nothing to do with the show. So there are some items that are popping up here in kind of similar results matching fewer words that are from the brand Outlander, not necessarily from the show, but you're only seeing, 8 results of words of listings that had the words Outlander series in them. This next keyword is really hot right now. This one's exciting to me because there's items that are selling for a lot of money that shouldn't have sold otherwise, other than it has this look. And so this is Regency Core. This is from the TV series Bridgerton. And this is on Poshmark. So this is another one of those keywords that seems to be doing really, really well on Poshmark. On eBay, not so much. There's a few listings that have that have sold, but not like there are over on Poshmark. There are a ton here, and it's all about lace. It's all about puff sleeves, maybe even some floral, some corset tops or corset style dresses. And I'm going to show you some specific examples of this. So this is a White House black market, and they used Regency Core there in the title. That one went for $30. And then this is a Rampage. So there's the tag there from Rampage. And it has that kind of maybe milkmaid top to that. It's got that lace. And so that one sold for $30 with that Regency Core keyword, as well as Y2K. You're seeing Y2K with a lot of these as well. So a lot of times when you're doing this type of keyword research, it can be hard to just make out if it's one keyword or another keyword, but I've specifically looked for Regency Core as I was doing the search. This is a Charlotte Russe. So, at the mall brand, this one sold for $30. There's the tag there for you. So $30 for that item with that Regency Core keyword. This is a Banana Republic dress, and that one went for $58. You're seeing that keyword there again in the title. Here's Regency Core, Bridgerton, Edwardian. So those could be all, related keywords. Regency Core does come from that Bridgerton show. And so this dress went for $69. See if I can get the tag there. That's the tag there. It just says champagne floral. So it's all about the look. This dress happens to be from JCPenney. I'm going to see if I can get the tag here for you. I'm going to zoom in on that. So that's from JCPenney's. And this one sold for $130. I saw a similar one or same one from JCPenney's as well that sold for $150. So again, a really good example of it's really about the keyword and not necessarily about the brand when it comes to these certain types of aesthetics that you're going for.
Was your mind blown as much as mine? Well, in this next section, this is where a lot of hidden opportunity is, because there's keywords out there that most people aren't using at all. And that's exactly why they work.
So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 of the most popular fabrics right now that buyers are searching for. When you can include these in with your listings, this is going to help get your items in front of the right buyers. It's also going to open you up to new sourcing opportunities, because a lot of these fabrics that we're going to be going through are what are considered premium fabrics or fabrics that buyers are shopping for. And so it does open you up to so much more than just brands. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean in this video. So let's get started. All right, so this first fabric that we're going to be going over is what is called tapestry. This is a woven type of fabric. And so as we're going through this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some different brands. Some are more mainstream, some are lesser known. Some are really solid brands, but this one that you're looking at here is Coldwater Creek, which kind of a brand that I recommend using caution with. It definitely depends on the item. Now, this one is a small. Bigger sizes do tend to sell better for this brand as well as just in general. Because of the look of this, because of that fabric of this item, this one actually sold for $45. So there is that Coldwater Creek tag. And then this is a vest. So there's a big picture of what that vest looks like. And then there's a little bit better, closer up look of what I mean when I say tapestry fabric. So keep your eye out for that type of fabric. It is super popular right now. This is kind of a no-name brand. This is another vest, and this one is called Counterparts. Here's what that vest looks like. So that is a floral tapestry. There's another closer look at what that tapestry weave looks like. That one sold for $57. But don't overlook other items, accessory items like purses. This is a no-name item, no brand item. That's actually a vintage item. There's a close-up of that tapestry fabric. And this is just a little floral tapestry purse. That one sold for $33. Over on eBay, again, another accessory type of item. This is a pair of shoes with that tapestry. That one sold for $30. So check out that floral tapestry on those shoes. This is a jacket from the brand Cabby. So you're looking at the brand tag there. And then here's what this one looks like. It says 70s floral tapestry boho coat. So definitely with that 70s look, there's a little bit closer look at that fabric. That one sold for almost $54. And then this is a jacket from Blair. You'll get to see what this looks like here in a second. There is that Blair tag. So this is more of what I would consider a lower end, but there's definitely items from this brand that are selling for a fair amount. This is a good example of one. So this, there's that tapestry weave right there, but this one actually has cats on it. So there's the front of the jacket. That one sold for $35. So that brand Blair does make tapestry jackets as well as other types of jackets, and they do really fall into different themes people are looking for, such as cats or dogs or dolphins, or there's completely random themes out there. This is another brand where you're going to see a lot of themes. This is called Sugar Street Weavers, and they are known for their tapestry fabric. Rather, I should say they were known for their tapestry fabric. This is a vintage brand that is no longer around. So there is the weave that's on the inside of that jacket. And this one actually has a garden theme on it. So I'm seeing maybe some lettuce and peas, and I'm not sure what else is on here, but that one sold for $90 for that tapestry jacket. Another type of fabric that's really popular right now is what is called burnout. So there's a couple of different ways you'll see this come into play. So let me quickly explain what burnout is. So burnout, by definition, is a item where there's a couple different types of materials in that. And then a heating technique is used to burn away one of those materials. And so with this, you can see it this way where it's kind of almost a patchy look to an item. You can see that there at the lower section of this t-shirt. This is actually a t-shirt from Maurice's. Again, there's a close-up of what that looks like. That one sold for $25. Now, another way where you're going to see that burnout come into play is with velvet. So this is an Eileen Fisher item. So this is another example of where that material was burned away, and then you're left with kind of a sheer see-through where that was burned off. And so this is an Eileen Fisher item, very solid brand. There's the tag, and then that one sold for $57. This is another item. This one, actually, I do want to point out here, it is a Chico's item, but they did not put that in their title at all because they did put velvet, burnout, maxi skirt, whimsy, goth, fairy grunge, boho, artsy. So they are really playing up to those keywords because that is what buyers are searching for. And so with this item, there's that Chico's tag, but you can kind of see how it's a velvet, and then there's sheer that has been burned away to make that design. So that one sold for $46. This is another example of a burnout, but in a t-shirt where it has that more variegated look. This is a vintage t-shirt. That one sold for $50. Another example of a burnout in a shirt. This one sold for $35 from Lucky Brand. These are actually a better example also from Lucky Brand, but you can see how it's a little bit lighter around the neckline here. That set of 4 sold for $50, and you're going to see that burnout in a lot of the Affliction brand shirts for both men and women. So you can see how it's a little bit lighter color. It's not an even tone all the way across that item. That one sold for $35, but definitely it does go with that brand quite well. Now this one is a Victoria's Secret item that you're looking at that is a gold tag. They did play up those keywords, style-based keywords really well, in addition to that burnout. That one sold for $75. here is what this dress looks like. So you can see that it's a little bit sheer where that has been burned away. We're going to talk about flocked here in a second because they are very similar, flocked velvet. So I mentioned just a bit ago that flocked and burnout are very similar. You end up with a similar look at the end, but there are two different ways to create that look. So the burnout is burned away. Flocked is actually added to the fabric, and it can be difficult in some situations to determine which is which. And so that is okay to use both. So you're going to notice in the item that you're looking at here that they did use flocked as well as burnout. If you're confused on which one it is, it's likely that somebody who's shopping for this is maybe confused as well. And so they may use one term or the other term. Go ahead and put them both in if you're not quite sure. So this is that dress. You can see that it has that velvet. And I'll show you what actually flocked is. This is an item where, maybe it could go either way depending on how that was constructed. This is a Jones wear item. And this one is one that is for sure flocked. This is Bowden, so flocked meaning where those fibers were added on. And you can see here at the bottom of this picture, there's these black circles that are velvet. Those have been added on top of the fabric to better explain that. So if you get a look at this whole picture of this item, you can see how the majority is that solid gray background, and then those black dots have been added on top. That is flocked. So that one sold for $40. And then back to this Joneswear item real quick. So this one was listed for $235, but there was a best offer accepted on that for $68. I do have a video where I walk you through how to look up how much items sold for when a best offer was accepted. I'm going to link to that up here. All right, this next item is one that is for sure flocked. So this is a dress. Fortunately, there's not a brand tag with this, but you're seeing in the lower half of that dress, there's a velvet design that's kind of added on. If you see that it's added on, here's a little bit closer look of that. The best explanation that I can give is that if the majority of it is velvet, then it's probably burned away. If the lesser of it, the minority, in this case, like the lower half of that dress is velvet, then it's likely flocked. So that one sold for $40. They do have another fabric keyword in here that I do want to quickly point out, that is taffeta, and that is the material that you see there in the lower half of that dress. This is another flocked item over on Poshmark. This is a dress from Morgan & Co. The pictures are a little bit dark, but you can see that it's got a floral design where there is flocked velvet. That one sold for $80. This is a torrid dress, so you're seeing that the majority of it is not velvet, and then there's little bits here that make up that floral design that is velvet. So that is a really good example of it being flocked. There's that torrid tag. If you're looking for a tag picture, that one sold for $30. Here's one from International Concepts, INC, and this one has flocked velvet down the sleeves of this dress, of that blouse, and that one sold for $40. This next fabric is what is called chamois. This is what you maybe dry off your car if you wash your car at home. And this one is one of those fabrics that I consider to be premium, or a really good indicator if you come across this fabric and you don't maybe recognize the brand, that there still could be a good market for it, that there could be a good value in that item. So that is a tip to be able to source more items that you might not otherwise source with this. So this is one from a brand that is called American Edition. So there's the tag. Oh, there we go. Made in the USA. This is a camo men's button-up shirt, and then that one sold for $36. With this chamois fabric, it is very soft, and it usually has a little bit of wear to it. This one is a St. John's Bay, so we are going to be looking at some St. John's items a little bit later on in this video, but this is a St. John's Bay, to clarify. Back there behind the tag, it does say chamois cloth. That one sold for $50 for what is usually kind of a lower value brand. This is a chamois button-up shirt. It's very popular to see this chamois style fabric used in these button-up shirts. This is from J. Crew. That one sold for $60. This one is Cabela's. This is always nice when they're nice enough to put the type of fabric on that. You're not always going to see that But with this Cabela's deerskin soft chamois, that's a common tag that you'll come across with this Cabela item. That one sold for $35. Now, I do want to take a second to invite you to join the Empowered Reseller membership program. This is where I'm personally able to answer questions, connect with members. I'm even able to do things like store reviews, account reviews, listing reviews. You get access to a huge course master vault as well as a supportive community. It's where I'm doing live trainings each and every month, hanging out with my members. So down here in the description below this video, that's where you're going to find a link to be able to sign up for that membership program. And I can't wait to welcome you into our community soon. This next fabric that we're looking at is gauze. Now, this one happens to have the word gauze in the brand name. This item, it's called Oh My Gauze, and this is selling pretty well. So with this one that you're looking at, it actually does have a little bit texture to that fabric, but all gauzes do not have that. It always will have kind of a more wrinkly look to that fabric. So that's one quick way to be able to identify gauze. That is a dress that's new with tags. Almost everything else that is in this video is in pre-owned condition, but that one sold for $30. This is a blouse from Rails, but you can see how it kind of has that wrinkly look to it. And with this one, that one sold for $45. There's the brand tag for those of you looking at that, but it does have a woven look to that material. So as I'm zoomed in here next to this tag, you should be able to see a little bit of that weave pattern. Here's another one from that Oh My Gauze brand that sold for $42. And you can see another clue that this is gauze is just how this folded fabric is here at the top. It's a little bit thicker. That is another indication that that is gauze that you're looking at. There's what that dress looks like. Again, $42. Over on eBay, this is a Coldwater Creek item. Again, another brand to use caution with. I mentioned that earlier. And here's that gauzy fabric. You can see the lines in it, the kind of wrinkly look to that. That one sold for $40. There's a better picture of that one. So $40 for that. This is a brand that's called CP Shades. They do make a lot of linen items. This one does not happen to be linen, but it's actually cotton, and it's that gauzy fabric. The tag at the neck is always very hard to read on this brand. And if you're able to find a material tag, it will be spelled out there. You can't find that on every single item though. So just know that if you come across an item like this, it could be this item because it's a little bit hard to read. So you can see it's white on white there at the neckline, but it does say CP Shades. That one sold for $55. This is another item from that same brand, Oh My Gauze, over here on eBay. That's a pair of pants. And that one sold for $34. Again, you're seeing a lot of the wrinkles there along that seam. That's just the look of the item. That's what it's made to look like. This next fabric is Sherpa. Now, this is really popular, especially when it comes to Sherpa lined items and Sherpa lined jackets. So what you're looking at is an item from Wilson's Leather. And there's what that jacket looks like. So you're seeing Sherpa trim around the neckline as well as the cuffs, and inside of that jacket is all Sherpa lined. That one sold for $70. But if you come across items, whatever brand it is, if it's Sherpa lined, buyers are usually paying more money. Those types of items will sell for more money than items that are not Sherpa lined. This one is a Wrangler men's jean jacket. So there is the inside of that. This is a really good example of what that Sherpa lining looks like. It does kind of separate like that. And this is a Wrangler tag there. And there's what that jean jacket looks like. That one sold for $90. Over on Poshmark, this is an example of a Levi's Sherpa lined jacket. So there is the lining on the inside. You can see that is the whole, inside of the jacket. That one sold for $55. Carhartt, you're going to see this in a lot of different Carhartt items, vests as well as jackets like this one. And then that one sold for $80. Again, that's something that people usually pay extra for. All right, this next fabric that we're looking at is what is called moleskin. This is another fabric that if you come across and you maybe don't recognize the brand, just the item being this type of fabric means that it may be a premium brand or an item that buyers are willing to pay more for. So with this moleskin, it's very soft as well as thick. It's a little bit hard to explain, but if you come across a pair of pants or a jacket and you're not sure what type of material that it is, there's a good chance, you know that it's not velvet, that it's not chamois, You know that it's not these other things. If you can rule out those other things, there's a really good chance that it is this moleskin. So you're seeing a lot of how this fabric wears here next to this tag. This is an Australian brand called RM Williams. You will come across items here in the US if you're a US seller, especially when it comes to their shoes. Their shoes are actually pretty popular in the US compared to their other clothing items, but this is a pair of moleskin pants, and then that one sold for $65. This is a snap shirt from a brand that's called Ironheart, and this one sold for $250. Not the best tag picture with this one, unfortunately, but that one is moleskin. Here's another moleskin item. This one's from Filson, but gives you another good idea of what that type of fabric looks like. It is very similar to the chamois in that it's very soft. Moleskin tends to be a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit more stiff just because of that thickness. So again, this is a Filson item that you're looking at, men's button-up shirt. That one sold for $90. This is another one from that brand, Ironheart. So there's a better picture of that Ironheart tag. There are a few different variations out there. Definitely a big name brand, big money brand, I should say. That one sold for $300. Now, if you're looking for other really solid brands when it comes to men's clothes, I do have a guide that specifically covers men's clothes. So I'm going to link to that over here. It has all of those tag photos done for you, research, all of that. And this next item is another one with that moleskin fabric, but this is from the Gap. And then this is what the jacket looks like. And that one sold for $39. You're going to see this fabric in a lot of older items. It's still currently used, but you will see it in a lot of, more vintage era items. This is another vintage item, and this one happens to be from the brand Lee. So there's the tag there, and this is a button-up shirt. Button-up jacket. That one sold for $175, and that one had 4 bids on it. This next fabric that we're looking at, I did kind of lump these all together of tin cloth, oilcloth, and waxed canvas. Now, those terms, there are different meanings for them for the general purpose of this video and for buyers who are out shopping for these types of items. Most people aren't going to know the distinction between those different terms. And so I would recommend just picking one of those, or maybe like tin cloth and waxed, and going with it. It's really about the water repellency of these items. It's just some different terms, some different meanings behind those, but it does have a very similar finish, and the ultimate end result is that water repellency. So this is a Filson item, and with these types of fabrics, this is very common to see these types of wrinkles. So if the item has been folded, for example, it's been creased down the leg of those pants, it looks like there's been some other wrinkles in there as well. You're going to see that show up as kind of a faded look to those items. That is a really good, indication that that is a tin cloth or oilcloth or waxed canvas item. The other way to be able to identify this, and I wish I could have you feel this for yourself, but it does have kind of a waxy, oily feel to it. It's one of those things that when you first pick up, you're going to go, oh, that's what it is. And I know the first time that I came across this, it was an instant recognition of like, this is something special. This is something different. I don't know if I knew the term at that point, but at least, it's vastly different than any other material out there. So that one sold for almost $100, and there is that Filson tag there for you. You're going to see this type of material in hats as well. And so this is a hat that's called from a brand called the Outback, and this company does make items, but their hats are really popular. Again, it's all about that water repellency. That one sold for $35 plus shipping. This is one from Polo Ralph Lauren, so there's the tag there. You're going to notice with this type of fabric is oftentimes it has just a slight bit of shine to it. And so you can kind of pick up on this, around those pockets. It looks like the light is reflecting a little bit, as that picture is being taken. So that one sold for $125. This is another example of a hat with that oilcloth. This is from Orvis. There's what that inside is. And that one sold for $50 plus shipping. And then this is a backpack. This one's from Duluth, trading company. So you're seeing, again, those wrinkles showing up there in the fabric. That one sold for $40. Over on Poshmark, we got another bag. This is actually a brand that is called Frost River. This is definitely a bolo one to be aware of. So that is what their label looks like. And that one sold for $135. This is another really solid men's brand called Marine Layer, and this is their waxed canvas jacket. One sold for $90 on Poshmark. And then Barber. So that is a brand that makes a lot of these waxed jackets. And then there's what that looks like. That one sold for $55. And again, you're seeing a lot of those kind of wrinkles to that. That's just part of that fabric. This next fabric that we're looking at is velour. This is super popular right now. It's really, really trending, especially as a lot of Y2K types of styles are trending. If you're looking for other Y2K styles that are really popular right now as that nostalgia is boosting, I will link to another video up here to help you identify those types of items. So this is a label from Victoria's Secret called Victoria's Secret Country. You can't really see the velour well with this one. You can make it out a little bit on the straps there, but that one sold for $32 for that. Where velour is really popular right now is when it comes to track suits, track jackets, as well as track pants. This is a pair of pants from Juicy Couture. These sold for $118. I'll show you what those look like here in a second, but there is that brand tag, and here's what those pants look like. They got a little bit of bling there on the front. Those sold for $118. Now this is from Aeropostale, so there is the label there. And I do want to point out that this is a set of the top as well as bottoms. But what I want to point out is the size on these. So this is extra small as well as a double extra small. And then that sold for $46. And then here's a little bit more closer up look of what that velour looks like. It definitely has a little bit of a sheen to it. It's longer fibers than velvet. And then this is a Lily Pulitzer set there. So that's the top as well as the pants. Was sold for $85. Over on eBay, this is a Gloria Vanderbilt set of velour. So you can, again, see that velour fabric right there a little bit better. That one sold for $44 for that set. And then a niche. So anytime you come across these older Y2K, 90, 2000, early 2000s era items, these are going to sell for, a little bit more. There's so many brands like this that are really strong, that were really strong around that Y2K time. I do have another video I'm going to link to up here if that is something you're interested in, is learning about more Y2K brands like this. So this is a niche that you're looking at, and this is the top, the jacket, as well as the pants. It's for almost $100, like $97 for that. And then this is a Puma jacket. So there's the tag there. And this one is just the jacket. It is a double XL. And then that one sold for $40. This next fabric is tweed. And so this is really popular. Another one that is very, very trending. So this item that you're looking at, this is actually a vintage mini skirt. I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. But I do want to give you a really good close-up of what the fabric looks like, because it's definitely textured. It's definitely 3D. There's often, a lot of different colors mixed into those fibers. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what tweed is. That's that skirt there. That mini skirt went for $66. One of the most common labels that you'll see when it comes to tweed is Harris Tweed. And this, you can kind of think of like a certification for a fabric. So this is just basically stamping that it is authentic, that it is hand woven. All of the Harris Tweed items are hand woven, by the way. But you will see other labels with this because this is just the fabric. It's not the brand of the item. So different brands will use this fabric, and you'll see oftentimes two labels in an item uses the Harris Tweed. So here's a close up of that fabric, and you can see the different colors that are mixed in there. You're also going to see some of these kind of like hair pieces off of that. That's just part of the fabric. So this one is a men's blazer. That one sold for $120. So here's one that has a really good example of two labels on it. So there's the Harris Tweed. That is where that jacket opens up at the front. And then that one sold for $80. And I'll go ahead and show you there. This one also has an Orvis tag. That's at the typical place where you would find that tag. at the back of the neck. And I am going to zoom in on that because you can see just all of the different hues that are put into that. There's blues, there's purples, there's grays, there's browns, all mixed in there. So $80 for that jacket. This is a set, a blazer as well as a mini skirt. It's from a brand called Endless Rose, but with a lot of these items, it is more about the fabric and the look versus just the brand. So this is a good example of that. Set sold for $72. And this is a tweed plaid. So you can see that how, kind of 3D that weave is on that tweed. Another thing that I do want to point out in this title here is some of the other keywords that they're using. For example, clueless, as well as Y2K and Mean Girls. So both of the Clueless and Mean Girls, those were both kind of around that Y2K era, movies from that era. And this one sold for $73. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but those are terms that buyers are shopping for. So I did go ahead and pull up just Clueless. I didn't pull up the Mean Girls to show you, but there are items that are selling, with that Mean Girls keyword just for the look of the item. So these are other Clueless items are selling that are also tweed. So I did put in tweed as well as clueless. And there's several items in here. I do have a price filter on this as well of, I think, a minimum of $30. But this gives you a good idea that there are people that are shopping for specifically that keyword and for, that look of items. And if you're looking for other keywords like that, like the Clueless and Mean Girls that have to do with a movie, I do go more in depth inside of my pop culture keywords guide. So I'm going to link to that over here, but there's so much more in that to be able to identify those different types of items that buyers are searching for right now. This next item is another tweed item, but this is from Goodfellow. I wanted to throw this one in because this is a brand from Target, men's brand. That one sold for $80 for that jacket. This is a blouse from Zara, and then that one sold for $40. And then this is one from St. John. So I mentioned that I was going to be showing a St. John item. So this is not St. John's Bay. This is St. John. This is a older version of their tag. There are many different versions of their tags out there, but this is definitely one of their older looks for that tag, St. John, and then it says 4 Saks Fifth Avenue. And this is a suit set. So this is a tweed jacket as well as a tweed skirt. That one sold for almost $400, $399.
If there's one thing that I want you to take away from this, it's that it's not just about what you're selling. It's how you position it. Because when you use the right keywords, you're not just describing your item. You're connecting to the person who's already looking for it. And once you start doing that, you don't need better inventory. You just start getting more out of what you already have. If you'd like help turning this into consistent sales, then the Empowered Reseller is linked below. Now stick around because in this next video, I'm gonna show you how to overcome slow sales and start bringing sales in consistently. Just click or tap the screen and I'll see you there.